Hello, good morning, and welcome to Moth News Live. My name is Keith Walsh. I hope you're keeping well. I hope it's not too hot where you are. Look, we're all melting. That's just the way things are. I'm looking at this laptop. It hasn't melted in front of my face. The heat, there's the heat coming off my face, basically. Coming up today, has the debate around Ireland or a united Ireland already begun? Spoiler alert, it has. Sinn Féin says now is the time to start planning. The government says, not so fast, guys. We'll unpack what that actually means. We look at the continuing fallout from the Jeffrey Donaldson debacle/case and what it means for confidence in Northern Ireland's political institutions. There is no political. They're not doing anything. You know what I mean? It's scandal. There's no. They're not actually doing anything about healthcare, about housing. There is no government. It's a failed state. And investigative journalist Johnny Vedmore joins us to discuss protest and who's actually protesting. Johnny, as a Welshman, a man of as an international man of mystery, but based in Wales. I'm gonna be talking about some things you're not fully all over. So we're gonna just tease some things out, but it'll be interesting to have a fellow Celt. And I know you're interested in politics, and I know you'll have a take on some of this stuff, but some interesting times. And also, you're going to discuss protests and some interesting findings that you've been doing a bit of investigating. You've looked at some protests, and surprise, surprise, all is not as it seems. So we will get on to that. How are you doing, first of all? Are you well in yourself, as they say in Ireland?
I'm brilliant, Keith. I was a little bit ill a while back, but now I'm fighting fit, and I'm looking forward. I grew up watching everything that was on TV when I was young. Everything that was on the news was nearly all about the Troubles when I was young. I come from Wales. It's a place that has a deep, rich connection with Ireland that's so much different than the English have. And we also, we stand in a bit of solidarity, and we feel like, we also have a movement here where we want some form of independence from the masters. But it's complicated. I don't know as much, but I do love diving into stuff that I don't know and learning. So I'm in.
Yeah, good. It's balanced then, because I don't know a huge amount about the work you're doing with protesting. So you're going to educate me. Hopefully, I'll educate you. And between the two of us, we'll tease a few things out and maybe get people thinking a little bit differently. That's all we like. We just want to put stuff out there, get you thinking about it. We're not telling you how to think. We're just getting you to maybe think differently and look at things differently. What was I going to say? Yeah. So tell people before we carry on. So newspace.com is there under your name. Tell people a little bit about who you are and where they can find you if they want to watch your content.
Yeah, I'm an investigative journalist. I started probably about 10 years ago, really investigating cases nobody else wants to investigate or could investigate, cases that were heavily censored, that you weren't allowed to talk about. And what I've discovered is there's loads to find in those cases, of course, because no one's looking. So I've broken a lot of big stories, and I like doing that, but I also like understanding how society is made up, because as I learn about these big, wealthy, very archetypal mad men that rule our world, a lot of the time they are designing our world as well, and then on the ground we experience that design firsthand get implemented. So I'm very interested in how they design society, what type of society they've designed, and who is designing society, because a lot of people won't know. As I'm one of the main experts in the Jeffrey Epstein case in the world, and I can tell you, loads of people don't understand that that's not just about all the salacious stuff. That's also about them designing our world and using black money to move around, dark money in banks and financial institutions, so they can make that world manifest.
Interesting, very interesting. So newspace.com is where people can find you, Johnny, and you might become a regular here with us on Moth News. We certainly would love that. So let's kick off. I'm going to kick off with a story from my old, I don't know if it's my alma mater, my old parish, a place I used to work called RTE. I don't know if you're RTE. RTE, Johnny, is the BBC of Ireland. And this week, RTE was in front of the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, which is the Dáil in the government. Kevin Backhurst, he is the head of RTE, the CEO. So he was up in front of the Public Accounts Committee about their financial position. Funding clarification. So Backhurst rejected the claim that RTE is seeking an emergency bailout. It's not an emergency bailout, guys. While state funding required for 2026 is projected at 55, let's call it 55 million, up from 41 million in 2025. The total funding will not be finalized until full license fee revenues are tallied at the end of the year. And interestingly, people aren't paying their license fee because they don't really agree with how RTE are going about their business. And it is one viable protest that people have at their disposal. Interesting enough, people are being locked up for not paying their TV license fee, but RTE aren't being really investigating anyway, I better not get into all that. So it's not an emergency bailout, but they are looking for 10 million more than they got last year. Actually, maybe.
Sounds like an emergency bailout.
It sounds like some kind of bailout.
If I went to my boss and said, just need an extra 10 million quickly, that sounds like an emergency bailout.
But it's yeah. Is it? Cost strategies. He defended the decision to outsource certain programming, such as the live Up for the Match from Croke Park. None of this will make sense to you, Johnny. If you can imagine a Welsh rugby match, it's the final of the Welsh Cup or something, and there's a show on the night before. There's this show on the night before where all the heads of rugby from around the valleys are in the studio talking about the good old days when they were playing football. This is top quality programming. That this is where the money's going. He stated that quality content comes at a price, and the organization is committed to maintaining high standards. Also, he says he's confirmed that 90% of PRSI classification matters have been finalized, with over 30 on-air presenters transitioned into proper employment contracts to prevent past legacy ambiguity. Now, this is a big topic for me. It's a hot topic for me. I used to work for RTE. I was called self-employed, even though I worked for 7 years, Monday to Friday at the same time. They were able to tell me what to do. They were able to talk about the content. I couldn't just send my son in to do the job for me. It had to be me. Anyway, apparently I was self-employed. Not so. There was an investigation, and it turns out I wasn't actually self-employed. I was an employee. Kevin, I just want to say, Kevin Backhurst, RTE CEO, I would like to say to you, I am one of the. Now, you said 90% of his PRSI employment issues have been resolved. I am one of the 398 workers dismissed after a process called the Evershed-Sutherland process. People who know, if you know, you know. Between 2018 and 2020, and I have subsequently been determined to be an employee by a scope section decision with the Social Welfare Investigations Unit, and RTE has not at all engaged with me. Look, maybe I'm part of the 10%, and they'll be in touch soon. If you have any tickets for the match, Kevin, I'll take them off your hands. So, Johnny, that's what's happening.
Well, I got to say, you sounds like you've got a bit of past legacy ambiguity going on there.
Yeah, past legacy ambiguity. I love their first album, very progressive.
I did. As soon as I heard that word, I was like, past legacy ambiguity. That explains the existence of the BBC over here too. That's what we call it. That's past legacy ambiguity. What's that? I don't know. Are they going to come around your house now and arrest you? I don't think so. I think they've lost the game to a new era of media. You can go out there and you can subscribe to whatever you like, and you can get whatever you like, and that past legacy ambiguity is not attractive anymore.
Yeah, past legacy ambiguity. I just think if I had that on my T-shirt and they were my favorite band, I think people would think I was cool. The United Ireland debate, has it already begun? Spoiler, yes, it has. This week, Sinn Féin introduced legislation in the Dáil that, on the face of it, sounds a bit dramatic. Preparing for a united Ireland. Dun, dun, dun. What they actually want is a citizens' assembly. They want 100 ordinary people, chosen at random, spending months listening to experts and discussing one simple question: if Ireland ever did become united, what would that actually look like? Health, housing, tax, education, policing, pensions, Stormont, which is their Dáil, identity, British citizenship, practical questions, things that you need to talk about if you want to run a country, which actually they do have a devolved government up there, but they're not actually doing any of these things. So somebody should talk about it. Why not Sinn Féin? They also want the government to produce what's called a green paper. That's essentially a discussion document. The government has rejected Sinn Féin's proposal, and I want to just play this clip for us all to enjoy. Very well put together by Claire.
So last night in the Dáil, Micheál Martin made it abundantly clear that he would not be supporting Sinn Féin's bill on Irish unity. Here it is, straight from the horse's mouth.
The government will be opposing this bill for a range of reasons. It would do little to achieve its objective, and it would recommit us to an approach which has failed repeatedly over the past 100 years.
One more time, just so that we're crystal clear on this.
The government will be opposing this bill for a range of reasons.
Now, I was there watching, and I was kind of surprised to hear this, because it's only a couple of months ago I saw him interviewed on the How to Gael podcast, where he seemed quite offended, actually, at the suggestion that Sinn Féin was the main Republican Party. Here's that clip.
Shouldn't you be happy to work with the biggest Republican Party in the country?
I beg your pardon, we're the biggest Republican party in the country, Fianna Fáil.
Are you saying Fianna Fáil is still the Republican
Of course
Party?
it is the Republican Party.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's an exclusive.
It's a Republican, not exclusive at all.
Okay, so you are an Irish Republican. That means that you would support a bill compelling the Irish government to plan for a 32-county Ireland.
The government will be opposing this bill for a range of reasons.
You oppose the bill. Okay, got it. So you're not an Irish Republican.
We're the biggest Republican party in the country, Fianna Fáil.
You are an Irish Republican, so you're in favour of a 32-county republic.
The government will be opposing this bill for a range of reasons.
Could do this all day, to be honest, but we've all got places to be.
That is Claire JC_official, if you want to give her a follow. And Johnny, you said it straight away. I was explaining, I was giving you a bit of a sort of an update on what's going on, and you said it straight away. So how are they the biggest Republican Party if they're rejecting this green paper?
Yeah, exactly. And Sinn Féin is doing just what Sinn Féin has written on his tin. It's pushed Irish Republic via democracy from its off, and that was its inception in a sense. So I mean, you have to think that if you, and this is why the co-opting of movements and political movements, there's I would say some sort of symptoms that manifest that you can see clearly, and one is if you have to do this thing to get to the main aim that you want, and you're refusing to do this thing, then there's something wrong. Wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it has moved on because I suppose we're talking about it. The conversation has started. It's a younger cohort possibly having the conversation. Maybe it's time for the likes of even Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil. Maybe it's time for you guys to move over. 10 years ago, the political conversation was, should we even talk about Irish unity? Today, the conversation seems to be, how should we prepare if it ever happens? So that has started already. And I suppose the question is, are Sinn Féin simply being politically smart here? We should remember as well, or bear in mind, that if there was a United Ireland, there's a high likelihood that Sinn Féin would be the party in government. They have a majority at the moment in the north, and they're very close to having enough to form a government in the south. So you have to look at it through that lens as well, Johnny.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting from an outsider that I'm someone who is, I find politics in my own country to be awful. I mean, I write about a lot about how it's become what it is now, which it doesn't allow representation for the people, but also doesn't come to any sort of conclusion, doesn't have any light at the end of the tunnel. From an outsider, it's very peculiar to see a politics when you've got a load of political parties where there is a lot riding on it, where there is a possibility that, by actually getting involved in politics in some way in Northern Ireland or Ireland, you can actually affect change. That's something we don't have over here. We get involved in politics, we affect zero change. That's a really important, but then, that light down the end of the tunnel, when that eventually comes, which I think it will, when that eventually comes, what's it, it doesn't just write itself. You've got to have an idea of what that united Ireland looks like as well. And I think that might be one of the main problems is people are very willing to think, oh, I'll walk towards the light, but until they see what the light actually looks like, what the plan is, what Sinn Féin or Fine Gael or any other Republican Party can offer as the end point of unification, then I don't think anybody will feel comfortable. It'll always get to a point where people will pull away just at the end.
Yeah, and like we have to look at how things are not being run in the north at the moment. So, like the people, I would say, the young people of Belfast, of Northern Ireland, deserve better at this stage. They deserve people who are actually coming up and implementing, education bills, healthcare bills, actually running the country. I think, whatever happens, we really need to see that. There's some very interesting things happening, especially if you look at TikTok and you look at the debate happening in TikTok. Now, would have to say there's not that many young people from the Republic, let's call them influencers, on social media talking about this, which tells its own story. But what you've got in the 6 counties is very interesting, very engaged young people, mostly women. I think I've noticed that could be my algorithm. I don't know, but it's mostly young women talking about. I think they started talking about like the safety of women in the north. It has one of the highest femicide rates in Europe. There's a lot of physical and sexual abuse that happens at the hands of white men in Northern Ireland, and let's say some people who have come to Northern Ireland from different countries. That also happens. Criminals are criminals, no matter where they come from. But now they've moved into, they have a story to tell, and they're talking about Northern Ireland, and they're talking about what they would like to see. This is a very interesting person I came across. I'm going to be talking to her on Monday. It'll be live on MOTH News in advance of the 12th, which is the marching season pinnacle. They light the bonfires. They talk about William of Orange. They bang their big lambeg drums and they parade around the place looking brilliant with sashes and stuff. But this young lady, interesting story, grew up with parents from both sides of the divide. Let's just listen to her for a minute, and I won't play the whole thing, but just have a little listen to her story.
I didn't think I'd ever make a video like this, but I think it's important. As most of you know, my father was a Catholic, mother is a Protestant, and I was born the year before the Good Friday Agreement was signed. My family lived in a predominantly loyalist area, and at some point my father got involved with loyalist paramilitaries. My father is no longer here with us, so I will never know his motivations. I can only imagine it was either for security, power, or money. Most of you will also know that I moved to England whenever I was 3, and this was due to my father's affiliation in loyalist paramilitaries. The fallout from them, rather. I was recently on a debate panel discussing the nuances of life in Northern Ireland. I started speaking about this for the first time. Before I could get to the point of my story, I asked if my father joined loyalist paramilitaries to kill Catholics, and why did he just not move? And I've thought about that interaction a lot. And not because I think that hard questions shouldn't be asked or that difficult conversations shouldn't be had, but because it highlighted something for me that we still struggle with in Northern Ireland. If our response to every uncomfortable conversation is to automatically assume what was right and wrong, we lose the opportunity to understand why people acted the way they did. If we can't understand how people get caught up in these things, why can we ever stop it from happening? It is not condoning, it is not rationalising, and it is not making excuses to explain your own experience and how you got to the point that you have got to. Because if I didn't have that negative experience and my family didn't go through what they went through, I potentially would be sitting here today thinking that paramilitarism is okay. We will gain peace in transparency and truth.
We will gain peace in transparency and truth, right? This is a massive problem for the north of Ireland at the moment. There's a case going on with a young kid who died, Noah Donoghue. You talk about ambiguity. Like there's so much. The people of the Northern Ireland, the legal system, just the system in general is bending or is doing so many backwards flips and turning itself inside out to cover up certain things because they're worried about the Good Friday Agreement falling apart and, the North descending into chaos. And they're very, very, very interested in keeping this play. They're playing politics. They're playing a state that works to the world, and they want to keep that sheen on there, and they don't want anybody to know that actually behind the scenes it's pretty chaotic. And when she says that, they have to get to the point where they've decided that they're going to be honest about what's actually happening, or nothing will work, whether it's the United Ireland, whether it's Northern Ireland working independently, whether it's Northern Ireland even working with the United Kingdom. They've got a big problem with being honest. And I think young people like that could be where the future is, with Northern Ireland and maybe the Republic as well.
I have to say what she was pointing out there, because she was talking about her experience of wanting to tell her story, and she's obviously she wants to tell her experience so she can help other people understand what they're going through and what they've been through and their own experiences. And she has seen a way to do that, and she wants to do that, and she goes to get to there, and she's in a system which automatically draws the extreme and creates a dialectic that divides. So what she's seeing there, not being able to say, instead of her being able to tell a story that can make change, she gets a harsh, "Oh, your father just wanted to kill Catholics," extreme, dialectically opposed. And that's where I was saying, from an outsider, outside point of view, I look in and see there's a lot of changes that can be affected politically. There's also a lot of room for that dialectic division in Northern Ireland and Ireland itself. So I think the younger generation, they're able to see it in different ways, but the important thing would be for her to get her message across and realize that when she did that, when she said that, and they blocked her from being able to say her story, she just keeps it. She puts that to the side, doesn't ruminate too much over them, and just keeps going forward to tell her story, because eventually all those naysayers and dividers will be pushed to the side by the next generation.
And that's happening on a bigger, that exact thing is happening on the bigger stage, because Sinn Féin, who some say are the political wing of the IRA, a paramilitary organization. But Sinn Féin are saying we're a legitimate political party. But what you've got is every time they try and say something, or there's an election coming up, you'll find Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil talking about the IRA and the atrocities of the IRA, and that's where they want to bring the conversation every time, which doesn't allow for us to have an actual conversation about the future of both these, of the 32 counties.
Yeah, it's using Hegelian dialectics to win arguments through logical fallacies. I would say. I would say this. Republicanism was always going to take a load of different faces anyway, and it is a good thing that there is a political wing of anything. If it's true that the Sinn Féin is just the political wing of the IRA, well, that's better than the IRA. So I'm happy that there's conversations going, and it just seems like a good thing rather than a bad thing. It actually shows a load of progress. Maybe that's what they should be doing. They should probably be turning that round on them and saying, we're making progress. For that, they need to probably embrace their history a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think there's definitely something with them being a bit more aligned with. I mean, it'll be difficult maneuvering, but yeah, to align themselves with their history and be a little bit more authentic and honest and transparent, which would definitely show up. The highest frequency is authenticity. Let's not forget. You know what I mean? So go all in and trust the universe, guys. Come on.
Again, it's like what Demi is doing you have to rewrite the story of the past to be honest. That's the only way that you capture people and their hearts and their minds, not just their minds. Because there's a lot of techniques out there just to capture your mind, just to brainwash you, just to keep you in a box. But it's capturing the heart and mind, and the heart is authenticity, and for that we need the stories. And if Sinn Féin was able to rewrite its story properly and fill in a load of the gaps of the past and say, that's a story of triumph. That's a story that's gone from the one to the other, from aggression to peace. That's a story. That is a story with a good, with a potentially good narrative, if you were to write it and tell it properly. And that would really capture the hearts of people. Those are game-changing moments historically, when you actually you offer authenticity, like you say. Authenticity is the word.
If you look at the circle of life for Sinn Féin IRA, the trouble started with a civil rights march. They were looking at America, and they were looking at the black population of America and their civil rights movement, okay? And they were inspired by that, the Catholics of the north of Ireland. So they said, well, we're going to do that. We're going to march because we don't want to live in a state where Catholics don't get jobs, Catholics have inferior housing and are treated inferior. We don't want to live in a apartheid state. And so they decided to march and decided to have these peaceful protests, and they were fired upon. And you'll know about Bloody Sunday, and that essentially being fired upon by the establishment, by the British, by whoever, the British Army, whoever it is, whoever did it, that kicked off the trouble. So what you've got here is this journey from, we want this to be peaceful. Oh, it can't be peaceful. We have to take up arms. That's the only way. And now we found ourselves at this place where it's peaceful, which is what we wanted in the first place.
And again, I've done so much work on the Black civil rights movement in America through the Pottinger case. Pottinger was Epstein's victim's lawyer. I was also able to prove that he ran guns with Epstein for the CIA during Iran-Contra. He lived 500 meters away from Epstein, and they were good mates. So they obviously had connection. But he was the guy who stamped off the assassination of Martin Luther King for the Justice Department as no conspiracy found. But we know there was conspiracies. And when you look at that period, what you're saying there is very interesting. And again, I go back to the same idea. People saw a light. They saw a potential. They said, look at what the Black civil rights movement in America is doing. We can do that. But then if you examine the Black civil rights movement in America, lots of people got shot, lots of people got killed. It all got covered up by the state, and the streets of Black communities in America were totally and utterly filled up systematically by state-run programs with drugs and guns. And so, that's a repeated theme. We got to realize that we can take heart from this, but it comes with the consequences that are going to come with it too. So, they got very similar. They became very similar. The Black civil rights movement still does not have a pretty ending,
Yeah, totally. it hasn't worked out well for them. And you look at the prison system in America, like it's still an apartheid. America it's one law for Black people, people of color, and one law for the white people, and also, but also it's to do with class as well, because there's a lot of poor white people in America really struggling to get any foothold or have any meaningful life. That's it for me, really. We're going to move on to your investigation into the protest. I just want to show you this clip. Obviously the marching season it's not just Northern Ireland, it happens in Scotland as well, because you've got unionists, you've got loyalists, you've got Republicans living in Scotland as well, and they like to get out and about and do a bit of marching around this time of the year as well. And here is an interesting solution to any issues that might arise from being out there and making noise and annoying your neighbour. I think this is workable.
Why Glasgow City Council have introduced the silent orange wall and the silent Republican March. The marches go ahead with zero noise nuisance and reduced chance of civil disturbance on the streets.
Yes, ma!
And now the city is piloting a scheme that lets the public enjoy these Republican and Loyalist marches using virtual reality.
Your hand's off me! Get off me, that's too tight!
Yeah, I like them being virtually arrested at the end. All part of the experience. I mean, could this work? The idea of a virtual protest where people can protest from the comfort of their own homes, maybe get arrested, maybe throw a virtual petrol bomb at the cops.
Would it work? It's going to happen. It's not would it work. We are on that road. If you look at what I try and explain, like, exponential growth of technology and development of technology means something really wild. You look at how quickly technology is moving. It is really wild. And in 10, 20 years, we're not going to live lives that like the next generation, especially, are not going to live lives like the ones we live now. They're gonna live in a bubble which appears real and is really, it may not even be within glasses or things you put on anymore. It'll be simple things, and it'll be literally like an eye drop or something, where it will cause a film over your eye and you can experience anything. You can experience anything audio wise. You can experience anything taste wise. You can experience anything. The future is you being able to trick yourself into believing anything's happening at one time. You could be in sludge and it tastes like the best salmon. You could be sitting in a hovel with in darkness and you're on a Republican march. Our realities are merging and they are desperate. The next technological revolution is about the internal, is about the biological. So we will not, I mean, that's not just
to what end though, Johnny? To what end? Like, if anybody's watching, like, I always question why.
I know, because for the sake of it. Yeah, so we got a system of something this is really what one of the main things Epstein was working on, and Epstein's main girl, we discussed Nicole Youngkerman, who was involved in Irish projects like Ziggurat, etc. These people are not what you think they are. The majority of their work was technological evangelism. They were designing the future. So they know what the future looks like. They know the technologies that will be needed to make that future, but the load of the technologies to get to those technologies don't exist yet. So then they were going to companies and saying, hey, you need to make these technologies, and then they make those technologies so then they can make this next technology. So they don't even know, the people who are making the technologies don't even know a lot of the time what the later stage reason for them making that technology is. They're just doing it because someone's come to them and said, here's some money, make this technology, and they've mapped out the next stage. And why are they doing it? Because he who controls advanced enough technology controls the world. And when we split the atom, when the bombs first dropped, that changed the dynamics of the entire world really quickly. And that was an epic moment in history. And it changed everything in the world. In the future, there's, like, coming up in the next 10, 20 years, there's 8 or 9 moments of technological revolution that are like that are that
big as that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like, imagine like you have 10 different versions of what the nukes were and how they interacted with our mind, our society, and what they made us do and how they made us reform society. It's going to just change everything. And at the same time, robotics and etc. will allow us, and large language models, not necessarily AI, but large language models will allow us to get to program robots to do all of the building, to do all of the work, to do all of the other stuff. So technological evangelism will be easier when you can say to a robot, bring me this in a minute, bring me that in a minute, bring me that, and just zoom, 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 zoom. It's a completely different world we're entering, and no one really has, like, even the people who are inventing the world and have the best idea of what it looks like, even they say, this is mad and I have no idea what to do. So to what end? Because they can't help it. Because humans are obsessed with evolution. That's it. We're obsessed with monkeys to robots.
So we were too busy doing it to ask whether we should or not. I can't remember the exact quote, but that idea.
Yeah, just I mean, if you see, again, it's about that light at the end of a tunnel. If you're walking towards a light at the end of the tunnel, you're like, whew, I know that destination. But what really lies after that destination? What does that light really mean? That's the same with technology. It's the same with our evolution. We just we have eyes that are too big for our belly. We know it. We know we can barely manage our countries and the stability within our countries. We just had this conversation about all of these political things, but we can barely manage that. I think what the people in power are hoping is that they can create a two-tier society where they get the best technologies and the best access to everything, and the rest of society is managed algorithmically by robots, and they don't even have to think about them. So I think that's what there is an element of elitism within what they want as well.
Will there be a space in this future, Johnny, for wannabe hippies like myself to drop out and just live somewhere in a field naked and see out my days?
Sounds costly to me. The problem is to make this world manifest. They need to take most of the minerals and most of the stuff out of the soil and amass in it with big robot machinery that's been made by even bigger robot machinery. And for that to work, for them to pollute the land, pollute the rivers, pollute the seas, there has to be no people protecting the land. So we're not allowed. That's why they want to move us into mega cities. That's why they want us in these big superstructures, so that we are not custodian. Right now, we're custodians of the land. There's people who live next to rivers out in the middle of nowhere, and if someone started polluting that river, they'd go to the authorities and say, someone's polluting that river. I don't want that to happen. And then there'll be a load of madness. If that person isn't there, it's over. We're done. Corporations will fill those rivers with black sludge, and that'll trickle downstream. That's it.
Wow. I mean, scary prospect. But yeah, and I think that's it. It's like it's reaching the point of no return too many times, and nobody shouting stop. Tell us about this investigation, Johnny, that you've been doing into protests, because this is very. I think for our viewers, mostly Irish, we've had the fuel protests recently, which you might have been aware of, and we often have these clashes. You know, we talk a lot about the duality and just creating these right versus left scenarios all the time. You see it all the time. You see these debates going on that mean nothing, but it's like, well, I'm the right and you're the left, and people are put into those boxes. It's handy, but then we see the protest. We see immigration, pro-immigration, pro-Palestine, anti-Palestine, Antifa. And they are happening all the time in Dublin mostly, but you'll see them crop up around the world when stuff happens. So tell me a little bit about the work you've been doing.
That was one of the interesting things. That was one of the things that motivated me, because I had a few experiences. I've always been a bit of an anti-establishment type of character. I can't help it. I always been cheeky with the police and authority, teachers, anybody. I've always, and most of the time it's benefited me, because I find if you put up a fight, they usually back down very quickly. And if you know your stuff, I did a police auditing for a while. If anybody knows police auditing, you go out, you record the police. Sometimes they break your rights, and you get to capture it on film, and you get to explain to the police in real time. It's good for people to see at home. I was going out to a load of police stations and doing recording, and I started to go to places, gravitate to places where police were, and that included protests. And then I noticed something. There was a few things I noticed, and there's a few experiences I had, but it didn't all come together straight away, what I noticed, there was one guy, I think his name's Saeed, and he's the head of every protest movement in Cardiff on the one side. So when it's Palestinians, he'll throw on the garb. When it's LGBT, he'll throw on the garb. When it's Antifa stuff, he'll throw on the garb. And he changes his appearance every time, and he's the head of every single left-wing protest movement. It's not
Johnny. He's just a good guy. He's just a good guy. He just loves peace, and he loves people, and he's just a good guy.
So he's a human rights lawyer. That's what I got. I said to someone, I'm really suspicious of this guy. And they said, which guy? Because I know a lot of the protests. I said, this guy. And I showed them a picture of him shouting at me, one of the protests. And they said, no, you can't mean him. He's a human rights lawyer. I was like, oh, is he a human rights lawyer? Because on 2 occasions, he basically suggested like things that would take away my human rights. So I didn't understand how he could be a human rights lawyer.
How were you guys clashing in these Sorry, what was happening that meant that he was shouting at you?
So I'll explain that. I'll explain that. I'll get onto that, because that really, I mean, one of the first experiences with him was in this protest. I posted up yesterday. I posted up a review of the protest. I went around the area and I explained how the police were positioned and how they pulled me out of a protest. But I'd noticed that he was constantly at the one side, so I did a little investigating. I discovered he was funded by the Ministry of Justice. And I thought, oh, that's a very interesting. He's funded by a few people and the Ministry of Justice. Now, on the other side of the protest, so he's on the left, and on the right, at this one protest I went to in 2023, it was against 15-minute cities. It's a very benign cause, 15-minute cities, you know. And it was the Voice of Wales, they're called. And I had met the leader of the Voice of Wales, who's an Englishman called Stan. Who loves his Union Jacks. Oh, he loves his Union Jacks. And I met him at Comcast event, which was an event for independent journalists and comedians to get together, that happened in Newport in 2022. He gave me and my friend a lift home, and he was a relatively nice guy. And I'd watched his stuff on Voice of Wales a little bit, but it didn't make any sense. So I thought I'd go to the protest and see how it was, because I knew the one side was a little bit gerrymandered anyway. I wanted to see the other side. And I walked in to this protest in 2023. It was outside the museum in Cardiff, and straight away I got into the faces of the police, because that's what I do as a police auditor. I go up, I start recording, and I ask them questions, and when they don't respond to me, then I get them to identify, I go through the routines, then I get them to talk to me, and then eventually I have a conversation with the police, and eventually they learn something, or I learn something, or whatnot. And the people at home learn something. And on this occasion, it was clear that the Voice of Wales had a guy on the side who was coordinating with them, and they described him as a former police officer who was helping them liaise with the police. And I found that very suspicious straight away. And the conversations they were having with the police didn't seem like protest movement talking to the police. It seemed like they were all coordinating how the protests were going to move in a way that was like the police talking to the police. And so I went round and I started just recording everything. And I went purposely to every single policeman who was there, and I talked with every single policeman I could find, and I recorded the conversations. You can see them in the video. I have conversations about Panopticon coming up, about the privatization of policing. I talk about I tell the police, a group of the auxiliary police, that I'm actually a journalist, that I agree with a little bit of what they say on this side, and I disagree with them on this, and also I agree with the other side and I disagree with them a little bit. So I want to be objective and I want to stay out. So I explained to each of them who I was, what I was doing, my motivations, and I purposely did that. So every police policemen knew what was going on. And then there was two sides to this protest, as there always is in Cardiff. And Cardiff's not like Britain, England. It's not like where you've got like a massive protest, 1 million men march, and you can't work out who's who. It was like 20 people on the one side and 20 people on the other side, so you could work out who's talking to who's friends with who, and whose places were. And I went around to talk to people, and when the one side was this human rights lawyer who was calling all the people who were marching against 15-minute cities racist. They're racist. We're not going to go down to that argument because they're racist. They're horrible. And really, everything he was doing was a way to turn the people who had turned up on their march, who were on their WhatsApp groups or whatever, and turn up to every march religiously. They were turning them against these people who were just like, I just want to find nice parking near my work, and so it was, and there was a load of people like going, I don't understand why they're calling me racist, and it got to a point where it became a bit clown-like. So when the actual protest started, I was recording, and I was just about it. They were going to go for a subway and up and into the city centre. And just as I'm going down the subway, this human rights lawyer, come up to the side and start shouting at me, "Stop recording. What are you doing? Recording." And he's like looking like he's going to hit me with his sign and stuff and things. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? What's going on? Like, you're being very visceral and angry, and you should just calm down. We're just marching. And I had I walked down. I said to the police there, I said, the police moved me on and down towards the march. And I said thank you to the police. And I walked down, and I noticed there's a ramp and going down to the subway, and there's a load of police running down the ramp. There's 7 police who are running down the ramp. They're forming a line just behind me, and I didn't know all of these police were for me. I'm in the march, and as we go into the subway, and this is all on camera, they come straight in front of me and they block my way, and they say, "No, you can't go any further." And they let everybody else go. So everybody else is going forward, or everybody else in the march, not one other person is stopped going. Everybody else is allowed to go the other way. And I'm like, well, why am I being detained? And they won't tell me. And I say, well, I'm press. And they say, show me your press card. And it's like, I'm on a protest. This is like, I'm supposed to have a right to protest. I'm covering the protest. I've just been moved on by the police. And what this wasn't because I realize now, after examining all the footage and doing a load of investigation, because I know a load of other things now. I've done a lot of investigation work on who each of these people are. And I know that Voice of Wales is extremely linked to the Tommy Robinson group. That is basically the same It's the English co-opting it's the English police state, the Metropolitan Police State co-opting the Welsh protest movement on the right, and the other side is the Ministry of Justice and other operations co-opting the protest movement on the left. And then they have a fake protest where both of the heads of the protest movements are not who they say they are, and everybody follows them and keeps in the exact line to what the police want. So the police are just creating a fake protest. It's the police on both sides. And when I actually look back on it, I can see, okay, they blocked me off with 6 police there. Behind me up the top, they had 10 police who weren't stopping anybody marching down. The protest had moved on. The people up top were just like dispersing. There was only a couple of them. They were just there for me, to stop me running up and going to the protest. And they needed to take me out of it. And I think it's because they knew who I was. At first I thought it was because they didn't know who I was, but that wouldn't make any sense, because they would have taken more people out of the protest if that was the case. But it's because they knew who I was, and they knew that I was going around and asking the questions they didn't want asked about each side of the protest movements. So what does this mean? For me personally, it was a shocking moment to realize that, okay, I'm being targeted. But it's also a moment where it's like, well, I'm not surprised, because of the amount of work I do and the public face and all of these different things. They know they don't want someone like me being around. So what should I do? I'm going to have to go to protest movements now. And I've talked with a few other people. I have a little group of people who are going to help me out with this. But we're going to go, and I believe everybody should do this. When you go to a protest movement, the people who head the protest movement are most likely infiltrated by the police. That's standard. You've got to have that belief. So if you have that belief from the off, those people are going to have to try harder to actually convince you that they're not the police. They have to try harder. They have to go out of their way to prove it. And we should be questioning them about whether or not any of them are attached, who they're liaising with the police, if they've had any connections with the police before. Because the police state is real. It's going up all around us. They are infiltrating. We know from previous examples as well, they're infiltrating every protest movement in every country. So if that's happening, then we should be looking at the people who head every protest movement with an extreme amount of suspicion. And as soon as I've done that, as soon as I've started saying, okay, I'll investigate them, suddenly I found a load of different things. Well, they're the same people who get people angry about migrant hotels, or get people angry about this, or get people angry about that. And all of it is the same thing. It's a way to manufacture dialectic oppositions. And that's a perfect example within a protest. They create the racists and they create the anti-racists, and they put them together and they simplify it like that for us. Oh, these people are the good people and these people are the bad people, and we're here to help facilitate. They said that sentence to me over and over again. If anybody who watches the video that's on my YouTube or my Substack or Patreon, anybody who goes watch that video, they'll hear the police multiple times saying, oh, we're just here to facilitate your protest. And I wasn't allowed to protest. So that's the reality of the protest. And so I mean,
you were ruining the protests for everybody else.
I am. That's what I do for a living.
They're just
information for other people.
They're just out there having a nice protest, and you're just ruining the fun for everybody. And that's why the police stopped you, Johnny. Come on.
Yeah. They were. It comes down to the fact I'm ruining their little theater. I do this. This is what I do as a living. It's really what I try and I hear lots of people talk about different things, about bringing understanding, about bringing information, like what we're doing here. Moth, you're trying to bring information, and you said at the start, we want you to think about this yourself. We'll give you the information. That information that you're given is context. Context is key. It's everything. It's absolutely everything. I know loads of people who think they know how the world works, and then you add a little context and their mind melts. And they say, this isn't how the world works. So then you give them something else, and and then you let them look really in the Jeffrey Epstein case, and they again, like you, they say, can I be a hippie and get away from all of this?
Well, apparently it's going to be too expensive, too costly. But if you look, like what you're saying about the creating these opposites, so you've got the right versus the left, you've got the racists versus the hippies. It's creating, these people over here shouting at those people over there, and what you're saying really is, so you need the police, guys, because look at what's happening on the streets. You guys need us. We're here. And I presume, is that what you're getting at? Is the police are making themselves invaluable? The same way government might use fear around the othering of people to make their job, make them seem relevant.
To a large extent, but I think there's two other things that need to be thought of. One that's only really coming into my mind now, but one is that the police state is the future. So the police state is
just for the viewers, what do you mean by that? The police state is the future.
So they're creating what is called the digital panopticon all around us. So they have facial recognition cameras that do a load of different things. They'll put them up at events and they scan your face and check for criminals, yes. But they'll also use a system called Neo Watch, which allows them to use CCTV cameras and stuff to analyze and investigate in different ways that allows them to see almost everything all the the time. They're going to be putting up more and more cameras like this all around. And a panopticon, for those who don't know, was a prison that was created by a guy called Jeremy Bentham in the 1700s, and it had a central guard tower that could see all cells around it. And so the prisoners didn't know if they were being watched, but they would change their behavior because they thought they may be being watched. And that the police state really, in essence, is a state managed by the police and infiltrated by the police at every level. That includes operationally. So if you're police force infiltrating protest movements at the top, then suddenly you're in control of protests. If you're also then infiltrating politics as well, then you're in control of politics. Then if you infiltrate other parts of society or you force other parts of society, suddenly the police are in control of everything we do, how we act. And they use that idea of, oh, but you're better off, it's a nanny state, yeah, but we will protect you. Is you've got choices still, but it's like libertarian paternalism and behavioral insights. We'll give you liberty, but we're like a kind parent who will tell you which choices you've got to choose. And on the other side of it, the Hegelian dialectic is something everybody should understand. This idea that you have a thesis that comes up, an idea, and then opposed to that, you always have an antithesis, and they fight each other. So you have a red and a blue, and they fight each other, and they merge and synthesize and become the new thesis. And then a new antithesis forms, and then they synthesize, etc., over and over again. It's called the Jacob's ladder of Hegelian dialectics. That's how things tend to work. And if you've got police, and they're giving you, oh, this is right and this is wrong, and they are creating the Hegelian dialectic, then they are the synthesis. They are synthesizing both sides into their own, so they're in control of it. So suddenly they become the thesis, and that's the police state. The police state is all around us. It watches your phone, it watches your cameras, it gets rights to do everything because it infiltrates politics. And to infiltrate politics, you have to infiltrate protest movements, because protest movements and politics is completely aligned. Whoever is out of power will align themselves with the local protest movement. You always see the people out of power, not the people in power, who march alongside protesters. It's always against power.
Would you believe that having conversations about a united Ireland, who's in power in Ireland, who's taking what the future's, would you say that kind of conversation is theater, doesn't really matter, it's not where we're going, it's not actually how the government's going to look, it's not actually how countries are going to look very soon? Where would you stand on that? Because and the reason I'm asking that is because when we look at someone like Jeffrey Donaldson, and you might start, if you're a curious mind like me, you might wonder, well, why now? Why is this guy now? This is a Snapchat filter he used when getting in touch with a young woman who was 20 years younger than him. This is an actual picture, an image that he used to send to someone, and that this is in the papers. You can see it. So this is Jeffrey Donaldson. This is kind of scary, but like, what, why now? He was very much involved in the post-Brexit situation, how we set up Northern Ireland, the agreements, all that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, was it like they said, oh, he's a liability now. He was useful, now he's a liability. He's got to go down. We need to make this public, and he needs to go to prison. Is somebody else making that decision, or is it just an investigation? And suddenly the police believe these two young women who are complaining about being assaulted by this man.
Yes, I mean, the people, there's two different sort of questions or answers to give there. It's quite complicated, because what our society looks like in the future, like I said, is nothing like we think. So what they feed us and what they sell us isn't true. It isn't true. It's the people who are really in charge have already designed our society, already going towards it, already creating it through technological evangelism. And these people, Jeffrey Donaldson and other people, and this is the other point, are just the people who are holding our attention while they continue to do that. And
yeah. So it's a bread and circuses kind of thing.
That's why you divide and conquer. That's what the dialectic's about. You have to have two opposing sides, divide them, and boom, you've got control of society.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up now, but I think we can talk more about this, and I look forward to having you on MOTH on a more regular basis to have these conversations. I'm not fully, I will say, Johnny, I'm not fully buying the stuff you're selling in a way. Like I'm quite not cynical, but I'm like, I don't quite, but I'm very curious and I find it very interesting. And I'm not totally like, I'm also like, okay, yeah, that could, do you know what I mean? And I'm here to, I love having these conversations. I love talking to people like you. I love seeing like that. And I think, and that's what we want here on MOTH. We want people to listen. I think it's very easy for those in power, whoever they are, the mass media, the mainstream media, to point at Johnny and go, Johnny's a weirdo. This guy who presents up for the match for RTE is not a weirdo, you know. So it's very easy for us to be turned against people, and you know, conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat, all those kind of things. And I think we need to be really careful about that. And I think we need to be open to having conversations and listening to other people. I'm not saying that we're not here to give you an opinion. We're here to open your mind a little bit, maybe.
The reason they ignore me, the reason they silence me, the reason they don't actually confront me is because I come with a massive evidence. What I do is I write long form articles that are well sourced, and I bring the sources with it. And they don't like that because what I'm doing is just showing that what I'm saying is already being designed by these people in detail. And you can come and look at, I mean, for people who are starting off on understanding how our world are designed, come to understand the Burst the Davos Bubble series I did on YouTube, Bursting the Davos Bubble, and I go through this training slides that they were using for the young global leaders courses for Davos, and it'll show each part of this society planned and mapped out in detail, including words like population control. So those aren't my words. That's me analyzing their own training slides, their own documents that come from their own websites too.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting, fascinating stuff, and I absolutely love chatting to you and reading your stuff. And people can go to newspace.com. And Johnny will be on with us here on MOTH News. Johnny, any plans for the weekend? Anything? Are you going to go sunbathing, make the most of the heat, get down to the beach?
Yeah, I might watch a bit of the football. Got to be honest, I'm really. It was hard to watch England win the other day, so I'm.
Are you Norway through and through?
Well, I'm whatever isn't England, and I mean I know that's a little bit.
You have the look of a Norwegian about you. Have a Scandinavian look about you. So.
There you go. I shall be a Viking on Saturday. There you go, and I will cry. I will cry if they get through. So that's what my plans are.
Yeah, come on, Norway. We say here on MOTH News. I think everybody's right behind you there, Johnny. And Al, who is supposed to join us, is in transit, so he didn't make it today. But Al, if you're watching this, shout out to you. And Al would say, all his lineage is Viking. That's his story, you know. And so he'll be enjoying watching the Norwegians.
Well,
I'm not going to say pillage the English team.
There's other words.
There's other words I could use, but I'm not going to. But a reign of terror. Listen, Johnny, excellent, lovely talking to you. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on X at @MOTHnews_. You can find us on YouTube at @MOTH_news, or on Instagram @MOTH_news. Loads of places. And if you have a story and you want us to look at it, if you need a platform, if no one else will listen to you, if you want to tell us about some protests that are coming up in Ireland that Johnny might be able to visit, do get in touch. Just message us wherever you're watching this, and we will get back to you. I promise we will. We love hearing from you. And that's it. Have a great weekend. Toga Bugge. That's the Irish for take it easy.
Diolch yn fawr.
There you go. Lovely. Love it. Absolutely love it.